Okay, so are you absolutely dreading that massive geography chapter on India's natural vegetation? You know, the one where you have to memorize all those forest types, rainfall data, and conservation policies? It can feel totally overwhelming. But don't worry, because today we're going to break down all this complex material into the ultimate cheat sheet style review.
If you're struggling to keep all those different forest types and policy goals straight in your head, well, you're in the right place. In this explainer, we are basically transforming all that heavy, dense textbook data into high-retention visual study cards. The goal here is to make prepping for this exact topic incredibly efficient and, hopefully, totally painless.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll be defining natural vegetation. Second, classifying Indian forest types. Third, looking at the need for conservation. And finally, breaking down the National Forest Policy goals.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, defining natural vegetation. So, what exactly is natural vegetation? By definition, it's a plant community that has been left totally undisturbed over a long time. And this is crucial because that time allows its individual species to fully adjust themselves to the local climate and soil conditions. The absolute key phrase you need to remember here is left undisturbed. It basically grows wild. Think of it this way. If you live in a village and you plant a mango, guava, or coconut orchard, well, that's planted vegetation, right? It's under human supervision. But if that exact same variety of tree is just growing wild out in the forest, that is natural vegetation.
Moving on to Section 2, classifying Indian forest types.
Now, vegetation in India isn't just random. It actually changes dramatically all the way from the freezing heights of the Himalayas down to the tropical western coasts and island groups. As we go through these upcoming forest types, try linking them mentally to a geographical map like this one. It's a real game changer and makes it so much easier to recall their locations when you're sitting in the exam hall.
First up, we have the absolute giants, the tropical evergreen and semi-evergreen forests. These guys thrive in warm, super humid areas that get massive amounts of rainfall, literally over 200 centimeters every single year. You'll find them flourishing on the western slope of the Western Ghats, as well as the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The trees here are heavily stratified, meaning they grow in these distinct layers, with the tallest ones towering up to 60 meters high. And the defining characteristic? Well, there's no definite time for these trees to shed their leaves, so the whole forest just appears lush and green all year round. Oh, and definitely remember key species here like rosewood, mahogany, and ebony.
Next, we're looking at the most widespread forests in all of India, the tropical deciduous, or monsoon forests. Now, the crucial exam distinction here is between moist and dry. Let's break it down. Moist deciduous areas get about 100 to 200 centimeters of rainfall and feature trees like teak, sal, and shisham. On the flip side, dry deciduous areas get less, just 70 to 100 centimeters, and feature species like tendu, pallas, and amalthus. What's super interesting is that when the dry season hits, these trees shed their leaves completely. It actually makes the forest look like this vast, almost endless grassland covered in naked trees.
Okay, moving into even drier climates, we hit the tropical thorn forests. These are some seriously tough ecosystems. They survive in areas getting less than 50 centimeters of rainfall. Think semi-arid regions of Rajasthan, Gujarat, and parts of Punjab and Haryana. To conserve water in these harsh conditions, the plants remain leafless for most of the year. It gives the whole area the appearance of scrub vegetation, mostly just grasses and shrubs. Important, resilient species you should definitely note down are babool, bear, wild date palm, care, and neem. All right, let's climb up into the mountains with montane forests. In these areas, as the altitude goes up, the temperature drops, and that causes a huge corresponding change in the vegetation. It's honestly like walking through totally different climates in one hike. In the Himalayan foothills, you start off with deciduous forests. Climb up between 1,000 and 2,000 meters, and you hit wet, temperate forests filled with oaks and chestnuts. Push a bit higher to 1,500 meters, and you find these highly valuable commercial pine forests like cheer pine and deodar. And way up at 3,000 to 4,000 meters, that's where you enter alpine pastures, which are extensively used by transhuman tribes like the Gujars and Bakarwals. Oh, and a quick side note, don't forget the southern mountains. The temperate forests down in the Nilgiris have their own unique name, sholas.
And that brings us to our final classification, littoral and swamp forests. India actually has an incredibly rich variety of wetland habitats, covering something like 3.9 million hectares. To put that in perspective, that is a massive amount of land.
The absolute stars of this category, though, are the mangroves. They manage to thrive in incredibly tough, salty conditions. Salt marshes, tidal creeks, mudflats, you name it. They pull this off because they're made up of highly specialized, salt-tolerant plant species. You'll find these unique ecosystems really well developed in places like the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and of course the famous Sundarbans in West Bengal.
Moving on to Section 3, the need for conservation.
So, why do we need conservation? Well, deforestation in India isn't just some recent, modern phenomenon. It actually has really deep historical roots. During the British era, for instance, there was massive commercial exploitation. Imagine this. They literally replaced entire oak forests in Garhwal with pine, simply because they needed that specific wood to lay down railway lines. The whole idea of protecting forests was totally swapped out for just commercial use. And then, when you add our modern pressures to that mix, like clearing land for agricultural expansion, building new infrastructure, overgrazing by domestic cattle, and a rising number of forest fires, it becomes pretty obvious why these habitats have dwindled so significantly over the years.
Which brings us to Section 4, National Forest Policy Goals. All right, if you take away just one number from this entire explainer, make it this one, 33. The National Forest Policy, which was adopted back in 1952 and then modified in 1988, explicitly aims to bring exactly 33%, or 1/3 of the country's total geographical area under forest cover. This is a highly testable, very straightforward fact that you absolutely need to have ready for your exam.
But beyond that big 33% target, the 1988 Forest Policy has several other core aims. It's really a comprehensive playbook. It seeks to maintain environmental stability, conserve our natural heritage and biodiversity, check soil erosion, and actively prevent the extension of desert lands. It also plans to increase forest cover through what's called social forestry on degraded lands, all while increasing productivity to meet the rural population's heavy reliance on timber and fuel. And this next point is absolutely crucial. It aims to create a massive people's movement, specifically involving women, to protect the forests we already have. Now, I mentioned social forestry just a second ago. That is a major buzzword you need to know. It basically means the management and protection of forests, plus planting trees on barren lands, or afforestation, specifically to help with environmental, social, and rural development. The National Commission on Agriculture actually breaks this down into 3 super helpful categories: urban forestry, rural forestry, and farm forestry. The whole idea here is to bring tree management out of the wild and much closer to the people.
And speaking of people and forests in India, we literally cannot have this conversation without highlighting the tribal communities. For a vast, vast number of tribal people, the forest isn't just a bunch of trees. It's quite literally their home, their livelihood, and the center of their existence. They rely on it for food, for building materials, and for their local economy. But it's a two-way street, because these communities possess incredible, age-old generational knowledge of how to live in true harmony with nature and actually protect these delicate ecosystems.
Which leads us to a really important question to think about. Are tribals just minor forest produce collectors, or are they actually the key to ultimate forest conservation? The source material we're looking at highlights a really important modern policy shift. It's moving away from treating tribal communities just as collectors, and instead empowering them as active growers and absolutely vital participants in conservation. Leveraging that deep generational knowledge is perhaps our most powerful tool for the future of India's forests. So, what do you think? Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and definitely keep exploring.